Get started. Good evening. It is 7 o'clock on Wednesday, June 25th, and I'm calling this meeting of the Chelmsford Planning Board to order. My name is Chris LaValle, and I'm the chair of the board. Tonight we will be following the posted agenda. This meeting tonight is both in person and via Zoom. We have one planning board member on Zoom, Joel. If Zoom fails at any point in the meeting, we will continue the meeting in person. The meeting is being televised live and recorded via Chelmsford Telemedia and will be available on their website and on YouTube for later viewing pleasure. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is public input. Is there anyone on Zoom or in the room that wishes to speak on any matter related to jurisdiction of the planning board, but not the subject of a current public hearing pending? Seeing none, we'll move on. Administrative review, Old Westford Road, A&R, number 690.
For the record, Stephen Dresser, Dress Williams and Way, representing George Allen and Son Construction. We're just presenting this Form A plan. This is the second iteration that came in front of you. We had to tweak it a little bit based on some kind of relook at the zoning. We did sit down with Evan and the building inspector to kind of clarify maybe some issues that we weren't quite certain of. So we had to kind of redo the plan in order to make some of the zoning more accurate. There was also, we were in front of the Conservation Commission and they tweaked the wetland line a little bit. And we need the 80% of the contiguous area of the required zoning, so we need 32,000 square feet of contiguous upland, so that also had something to do with changing the lot lines. So we're just back here, we have the required frontage and area, and just looking for the sign off.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? All right. There being none, I will take a motion.
I will give you one.
A motion.
I move that we issue the A&R with no determination as to zoning.
Okay. Motion by Mike.
Second.
Second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Actually, we need to take a roll call because Joel is on Zoom. Joel? Okay. Marcy?
Yep.
Deirdre?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Okay.
Thank you very
Unanimous?
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Evan.
All right, next on the agenda is 300 Billerica Road.
Hi, good evening. Andrew Tyne for the applicant, Nexus Recovery LLC. I think you met 2 weeks ago on this project. I wasn't here and the Zoom wasn't available, so I didn't participate, but I did watch the hearing. So I am up to speed on what occurred at the last hearing. I believe Brad Greenstein presented last time, and the partners, the other people involved in the business are also here and present. So I think the board, I'm not going to go through what was presented last time. I think the board understands the nature of the project. It's an existing large building that they want to convert the use. I think it's unoccupied presently, but they want to convert it to be used as a detox facility, 150-bed detox facility with associated parking. There's more than adequate parking at this existing building. I think there's 457 spaces. And for this proposed use, the belief is 100 spaces is more than adequate. And the reason being is because at max there's going to be 60 employees for this use, and the residents, the people that be staying in detox, they're dropped off, picked up, they don't have cars, so it's not a situation that needs excessive parking. I know the board had a number of questions at the last hearing, so I think we've tried to address those. We've submitted some documents for the board in advance of today. We submitted an existing conditions plan. We existed a stamped proposed site plan stamped by the engineer, which addressed a number of issues raised by the board, and we have submitted a stormwater plan. So just going through the questions that I thought arose at the last hearing, We can go through those just to show that we have addressed those, and then obviously respond to any questions from the board. The updated stormwater plan, that's a 10-page document. That's been submitted. It's engineering. I won't go through that. It says what it says. The water's being obviously contained in a professional manner, and being handled in a way that the engineers think is adequate. The sidewalks. I know the board raised an issue, or the DPW suggested that it would like a sidewalk in front of the property. The plans that have been prepared, the proposed site plan, put a sidewalk coming from, I think, 270 Billerica Road, which will go to this intersection, which will allow for there's a crosswalk, so it will connect to the other side of the road where there's a sidewalk. So it will connect the existing sidewalk to allow for pedestrian traffic, but the proposed sidewalk won't run entirely in front of the property. My understanding, I haven't been there, but my understanding is that it just doesn't work. The landscape, the topography does not make it easy to put a sidewalk in, and the engineers believe that connecting the sidewalk in this fashion provides, a manner for pedestrian traffic which is safe and adequate. So that's what they're proposing. Handicap parking signs, those have been identified on the plan. The delineated parking for the proposed use, it's hash marked. You can see it's in front of the building and behind the building. They've designated the spaces that would be utilized for this use. The board raised an issue of the delivery area. That's shown on the plans. It's next to the dumpster. So the dumpster's here. I don't know if you can see that.
Actually, could you come up to the
Yeah,
screen?
yeah.
There is a microphone above.
There. Yeah, so the dumpster is here, and the delivery is right next to it. This is the loading dock area. And I know the DPW or the board asked about the dumpster also, and they're going to put a chain link fence and privacy slats, and that'll be the designated area for the dumpster. The parking, which I was referring to back there, is the hash mark areas here. With respect to the snow placement on the property, I think the board inquired about that. Where would snow be stored? The suggestion on the proposed site plan is to remove, I think there's 17 parking spaces existing here. So the proposal would be to remove those parking spaces, make this a green area, put some curbing around it, because there's more than adequate parking, obviously, which would allow for snow storage. And that location, and I believe they designated another area over here for snow storage. Let's see. What other issues were raised? The smoking area is designated here. That part of the building. Let's see. If there's anything else that we had. I think the last issue was the DPW is to confirm the sewer line and pump station capacity, and I know we heard from them verbally that it's adequate. There was an indication they might submit a letter before this hearing tonight. I don't know if that's occurred yet, but verbally we heard it was adequate. And so I think based upon our submission, the proposed site plan, the applicant is ready for approval for this use and for the proposed site plan, if the board's, willing to consider that tonight.
Okay,
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board? Actually, Evan, do you have anything to add before we get to the questions? Okay. We do have a new letter from DPW. Joel, do you have that letter to read?
Yes, I do. Just 1 second.
Yep.
Get to the right one here. This is taking way too long.
We can come back to that if you need some more time.
If you would, because I had it up and now I can't find it.
Okay.
To help him out, I have that.
No, it's okay. We'll get back to it. All right, we'll go for questions. Mike?
I'm not sure I completely see what the sidewalk proposal is. I couldn't quite make it out. Maybe you could just run your finger across the...
My understanding from
Yeah.
the engineers explaining it to me
Yeah, no, that can be tough.
is that the sidewalk is going to run from here
Okay.
to this, oh yeah, right here, new 6 foot wide
Okay,
concrete
so
sidewalk.
that's gonna be it there.
Will go to here, which I believe is an intersection
Yep.
here. And there's a crosswalk, or there will be a
Mhm.
crosswalk, and then I believe there's an existing sidewalk on this side of the road. So that pedestrian traffic will have the ability to basically get to this sidewalk from the existing sidewalk
Okay.
over here.
Yes, all right, now I understand.
That's my understanding.
I'd like to add to a question to what you have there. I believe that you stated due to like the landscaping there, it would be hard to put a sidewalk in front of that area across the parcel.
That's my understanding from the engineers.
Right. I mean, it looks like the needed parking space is a lot less than what you have there. So is there a reason why the green space can't be pushed up into that parking area along the front portion, allowing the sidewalk to go front across the property?
Well, I think one of the issues is that currently the proposal for Nexus Recovery is to occupy the second floor of the building. And then I think you did see on the plans we submitted 2 weeks ago, they're occupying the second floor, then they're occupying a portion of the first floor. They're taking down all the space, and they're anticipating then filling the first floor. So there needs to be additional parking for the first floor. There obviously could be a situation where they stay on the second floor, and in the existing space they're taking on the first floor, and there's a possibility that the other space could be used for a different purpose, which might have a greater parking demand. So I know the owner of the property isn't in favor of decreasing the parking, because then it limits the uses of the building. And obviously this tenant may not stay there forever, so once that parking's gone, it's not coming back. So I know the owner of the building's in favor of keeping the existing parking. Obviously, they're already reducing 17 spaces, but it's more than adequate for this use and allows, for full potential use for the property in the future. And given the access for pedestrians from 270 and the ability to cross the street,
That's a busy street,
the
though.
pedestrian issue is satisfied. And as to moving this up, I don't know. That's just a major undertaking. Obviously, taking off all this, taking away all those spaces, and you'd lose, 100 spaces, and obviously, much more costly endeavor.
That's a really busy street. Like, I like to be crossing over, and
Yeah.
then you have, like, if I'm not mistaken, you have Press Cafe on the other side.
That's what I was thinking too, because on the other side of this building is where Press Cafe is.
So if people want to walk to that, yeah.
Right.
Like, I think you should go back and,
Evan, is there another crosswalk near Prest Cafe going back over that street?
At the signalized intersection,
Yeah,
the
okay.
entrance to Prest
So
is fully signalized.
workers at that warehouse would have to go to this intersection, cross over,
Walk down and
walk
cross.
down, and cross over again.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I agree. One of the things that could give it enhancement by having that crosswalk go across is in future pieces of using this property, it would just give more access and more people to walk in front, and by maybe moving that green space out, you can still maintain it. It would look a little better.
Joel, do you have the DPW letter handy? Because I know that they do address the sidewalk issue in the update.
Yes, I do. Just one second. Okay. So it's from Sheila Joyce again regarding this application. The engineering department has performed a review of the site plan application for 300 Billwicker Road submitted for applicant Nexus Recovery LLC. The following contents of the submission were reviewed for appropriateness of method and accuracy, as well as for compliance with Town of Chelmsford stormwater bylaw, et cetera, and then cites the 3 different things that they reviewed: site layout plan, existing site conditions and demolition plan, and the O&M plan, which are attached to the agenda. So of the site plan review, outstanding DPW engineering issues, they said not addressed, but their comment is no outstanding site plan review concerns. Comments regarding enclosed dumpster and long-term perpetual care of the dumpster have been adequately addressed. Under site plan review request addressed, sidewalk proposed to be continued along frontage of 300 Billwicker Road up until the parking lot entrance/exit across from Elliott Street. DPW will work with owner for any additional sidewalk extension projects in the future. And then sewer comments were pretty much the same I believe, I didn't look through them carefully, but they look to be pretty much the same sewer comments as before. And similar for stormwater, that there were no calcs submitted, that DPW's not performed a stormwater review. Approximately 4,000 square feet of impervious area is proposed to be removed to create green space according to site layout plan. And that's the owner's responsibility to provide completed annual records. And the recommended general conditions of approval have to do with the as-built plans, and also that DPW will monitor and enforce the sewer flow limitations. And that's the extent of the letter.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's continue with questions. Mike? We'll get back to the sidewalk in a minute.
I'm fine for the moment.
Okay. John?
Just as far as like operational, I believe one of the applicants stated at the last meeting, this is their first, inpatient center, I believe, in Massachusetts. If that's incorrect, please let me know. As far as security, I believe this would be the first facility of this size in town. If you did encounter any security issues, and this may be for Evan as well, is there anything the planning board can require as far as like the applicant working with the police, if that's required, to address any security concerns?
Do you want to answer the question first?
Yep. I'll answer that in two parts. So this would be the first facility that Nexus Recovery LLC operates. It's a new entity, and the partners of the entity are all people that have operated and owned these types of facilities before. So while this legal entity would be the first, I think all of us have, in my case, 25 years, in other cases, decades of experience operating these. In terms, so that's more of a clarification on your first point. Second point is, just as a typical course, what we would normally do is reach out to local police, local fire, local EMT, and just discuss, these are our security plans. These are the protocols that we're used to sort of operating under. Do you have any input? Would you like to be called under this type of scenario or this one? This is how we anticipate certain, potentially needing you. And we found that type of sort of upfront, before the doors ever open, collaboration tends to solve most issues that might arise, if you didn't do that and now you're opening and you're running into some things. So we would voluntarily approach, local agencies, police, fire, EMT.
Thank you.
That's what I was going to suggest. So they seem amenable to a condition related to that.
To go with his, are you going to have your own on-site security on the premises, not just work with local town?
So we wouldn't hire what I'd call traditional security, but there are staff, 24-hour staff, who are engaged in a role of security, for the lack of a better word. They're responsible for patient supervision, for checking entrances and exits, for doing hourly checks on the location of every patient. So it's not a traditional security guard like you or I may think about, but that's also not what's really preferred for a patient experience. When someone comes there, they're dealing with behavioral health issues. We don't want to make them feel like they're in a criminal justice environment, but we do want to maintain, the physical security of the building, security of patients, security of staff, and that's the best way to do it in a sort of non-formal but still documented way.
Okay.
Anything else, John?
No, that's good.
Okay, Anita?
It would be helpful if we could get a list of the other facilities that you run.
Sure.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing and also query if there's been any significant community issues at those facilities. And then also, what is the incidence of relapse or recidivism by patients while they're within your facility?
While they're within our facility, that would be a very, very low number because of the protocols that we have in place upon admission, throughout treatment, at discharge. Recidivism and relapse rates post-discharge are hard to track. And,
Sure.
And we know
I'm more
that
interested in, do patients get searched when they come in to make sure they're not bringing
Yeah.
controlled substances?
Yes. So the licensing agency that would license us, the Department of Public Health Bureau of Substance Addiction Services, has very specific guidance and protocols on how to do what they refer to as trauma-informed patient searches.
Okay.
So you're trying not to be too
Intrusive.
invasive or intrusive, but also provide the security that the facility needs. So
Okay.
we would operate under their guidance and protocols.
And have there been any significant community problems at the facilities that you and your colleagues have run?
Sure. So I was involved. Probably the most apples to apples one would be the facility, the Recovery Centers of America facilities in Danvers, Massachusetts. Not terribly far from here.
Sure.
Actually larger than the proposed site. They have 217 beds. And the community issues really focused around, in one case there was issues with lighting, because that facility abutted a dozen, maybe 15 single-family residential homes. And the height of some of the spotlights in the parking lot were disruptive, but they were relatively minor issues that I think we were able to navigate pretty easily and amenably. So I haven't seen that much in terms of like actual neighborhood disruption.
Festering
There's always
sores.
concerns.
Sure.
There's always concerns, founded, unfounded concerns, but what actually happens after a facility opens tends to be quite different than the fear of what
Right.
may happen. Yeah.
So there haven't been like festering.
Oh no, not in my experience, and I've been running these 25 years. Yeah, and with facilities a lot closer to homes and families.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I guess going back to the letter that Joel read, I didn't have a chance. I think that just came in today. I didn't have a chance to look at it. Did you say that there's no change in their thoughts on the sewer, which means there's a significant disparity between the amount that you're able to get automatically and the amount that you're going to require? Is that correct? So the balance will have to be bought?
Is that a yes? Oh yes, the balance
Yes.
would have to be bought.
Okay,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
what I thought. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, the balance would be purchased, and the DPW did confirm that they've got enough flow capacity.
Okay,
Capacity.
right, okay. That, I just wanted to clarify that point. Sorry about that. Okay, I think that's all I have.
Marcy? Nope.
You know, I'm sorry, one more thing. I'm, from a standpoint, obviously, you are business people trying to make this plan work to the best of your ability, but from a standpoint of this is the gateway of the town, and a lot of those properties have green spaces in the front between the buildings and the street. This property does much less so, and I think that the pedestrian access, as well as kind of the overall green of the space, I personally would like to
Especially if it's,
see it look a little different.
yeah, especially if it's a treatment facility. Like, I don't know, I kind of envision a treatment facility to have a little bit more green space or like something more calming than.
Yeah.
we've managed.
Like, what if people want to go sit
So-
outside and have a picnic?
Like, I mean, yeah, yes, exactly.
last
I
time-
don't know,
We asked that last time too,
Yeah.
right? So I think they put in
The
two
smoking
areas. Well, they have the smoking area and then another recreation, yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause I think we
Landscape
had-
green space.
Because we had asked almost if they were going to put in like a walking path or something for people to enjoy. But the thing is here, beautification's a big thing in Chelmsford. So how are they modifying this area to be better for that?
Yeah.
But Brad, can you clarify? I mean, when individuals enter the program or they enter the facility, are they coming and going during the day?
Yeah.
Okay, so people don't leave the facility and they're not permitted to like walk around the facility or in the neighborhood or something like that.
Yeah.
No. So, for purposes of the people that will be living at the facility, they're living there for the duration, receiving treatment. They can use the smoking area. I'm assuming that's monitored, so they can't depart from that area.
Correct.
Yeah. So, in terms of the people participating in this program, 150 beds, they don't have a need for, a space to walk outside in terms of going around the whole building or sidewalk access or something like that. I understand it's nice for the town to have that sidewalk connect in front of the building between the, two different parcels. The logistics of that for this tenant is that, that's a significant financial undertaking. That's something that would have to be proposed to the owner of the property. They have looked into it. What their engineers came back with is what they proposed, which is that connection to the intersection, because my understanding is that the topography, and I confirmed it again in front of that building, there'd be a requirement for retaining walls and things of that nature. It'd be a major engineering feat and expense, which this tenant obviously can't undertake.
Did I not understand that the DPW said they would engage with the tenant?
Correct. I just didn't know if the board was suggesting that's something that this tenant has to perform, which it really can't. But DPW.
Well, if they worked with the DPW and were able to come to some mutual agreement that would enable them to build a sidewalk that would be feasible for the owner, and also that the DPW would help to achieve that, it might be worth exploring that.
Oh, obviously the tenant would be in favor of that. It's just not something
well,
that
what
they.
about the owner?
Yeah. I don't speak for the owner. I'm not the owner's representative.
Okay.
I'm not in control of their pocketbook. They obviously are making a significant contribution to try to get this to go forward, paying this, $1.3 million for a sewer fee. So there's some significant upfront expenses for this owner to have this project go forward. Frankly, I have no idea what a sidewalk would cost in front of that building. Is it 10,000 or is it 10 million?
Yeah.
I have no idea, but I assume it's
10 million.
expensive. So, that's a big ask for the owner on top of what they're already contributing to try to get this tenant into the building.
And how long is the proposed lease?
20 years.
Oh, 20 years? Oh, okay. Then I think we should make a requirement that they have the sidewalk.
Evan.
It's a 20-year lease.
Evan, what is the DPW statement in there about working with the owner for future projects mean? Do you know?
I'm not exactly sure. I do know that DPW long-term vision for Billerica Road is sidewalks on both sides. So within that context, if and when DPW advanced that project, they'd be contacting property owners in an attempt to either gain easements if need be, or coordinate, daytime construction work with property owners.
Okay. Let's put a hold on the sidewalk discussion for now, and then we'll get back to it after. Any other questions?
No, I think, with what Anita asked, looking for information about your other properties and whether these, patients would be wandering the building, and you're saying they're really not going to be, they'll be monitored outside. I think I'm kind of better with that, because my concern is just down the street there is the daycare center. And so I want to make sure that your patients are sort of maintained at your facility, for those parents who are putting their kids at that daycare center feel that their child is going to be safe and secure there as well. So.
Sarita?
How many employees do you intend to have at this facility?
We were estimating 130, 140 total employees. Number of employees in the building on the greatest shift, which would be the first shift, Monday through Friday, approximately 60.
Okay, so getting back to your question about people not needing to walk outside, there's a potential that the employees, for their betterment of life, might want to. So, just because the people that are the patients there may not want to, the employees might. And the thing is again, back to the beautification of the site, I'm sure the residents there as well don't want to be looking out their windows at pavement. Just a comment. And looking at the snow storage that you have there, how did those spaces come about? Because they look fairly small.
I don't know if the square footage is on there. The engineers working for the owner of the property put together those, snow storage areas. I believe the one in the upper left-hand corner was 17 parking spaces. I don't know how big a parking space is, but in general, it seems like a pretty good size. When I've seen snow stored on lots, they have a pile of snow and a group of parking spaces, so.
Right, it looks like the
Yeah.
bottom one is adjacent to the building, so.
Yeah, it looks like that's green space.
And it says in there, potential snow storage that they're planning to put against the building.
Yes.
So you may want to think about some alternatives with the snow storage.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
all
they
I have.
definitely can do that. I don't know. I'm assuming there isn't a restriction that they have to put snow in those spaces, given the significant, number of parking spaces, the adequacy. I assume they could store it anywhere, right?
Yeah, I believe it's just to have it marked out on the plan.
Yeah,
So if
yeah.
they're going to use spaces that they don't feel like they're going to use for parking, then it should be slated that way.
Okay.
Joel, do you have any questions?
Yes, actually, I was sort of tagging on to what Sarita was asking about the green space area that is also going to double as snow storage. What is the purpose of that area, or what's the purpose of the creation of that area?
I'd have to look at the existing.
Was it created for snow storage, or was it created for, no, the one that's on the other side? The,
The back
I
one.
can't actually see what you're pointing at.
Yeah,
'cause
that
I'm
one.
We're gonna come
seeing-
into this one.
I'm sorry, just to be clear, this one.
Yes, that one.
The camera's catching up to you. Could you point to it again now that the camera's actually seeing it? That is the one.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
I don't know the answer.
So
But we've identified the area.
why was that
Yeah.
green space created? The reason I'm asking is because if it's created for the purpose of the snow storage, then I think I would have one comment. If it was created for the purpose of having green space, then I might have another comment. So
I don't have the existing condition plans with me, but my belief is that this is, I know they were submitted to the board, but we didn't bring the correct plans with us in paper form. This space is being created from parking spaces. This, I believe, is existing green space. They're not removing parking spaces. That's my understanding. I would
yeah,
have to see
well,
that.
okay. So let me get to what I'm getting at, which is
Yeah.
that your next door neighbor has documented contaminated groundwater, and there's a lot of detailed analysis with regards to that regarding their site, but there isn't any information about your site. And on that site, 270, we actually, agreed with them that they would not have infiltration on their site, but that stormwater would involve essentially capturing and then moving it off into surface water, as opposed to infiltrating. So
Okay.
the area of impervious that you're now removing and creating pervious means that it's a source of infiltration. It would seem that the area is not so large that you would be maybe not as concerned about the fact that you would now be infiltrating that area, but if you're going to pile a bunch of snow on it, then you are, I think, in effect, creating a higher volume of water that you're now going to be pushing into the ground. So because we really don't know what the status of your site is with regards to that, I still think it's prudent to, I think having the green space for the purpose of green space is reasonable, sort of trading off the benefit of having green space versus the question of exacerbating potential contaminated groundwater. But piling snow on it's a different matter. I think you really don't want to be putting snow on a pervious area there. I think you want to keep it on your impervious, because then it'll go through your normal stormwater system, which, even though we sort of asked how it works, which no one's here to tell us how it works, I can pretty much guess that if it's anything like 270, you have catch basins which are probably pushing it into your retention basin, and then it's moving off into likely that trench behind 270, because we noticed that was deep and had a fairly steep, a gradient at least down towards the stream or whatever that's on the west side of 270. So that would be my comment: is I would not use that. I would not use that pervious area for snow storage for that reason.
So what I think the engineers did is they listened in at the last hearing 2 weeks ago, and I think they're listening in today also. And I think the board was asking for additional green space, so they thought converting parking spaces to green space and also using it for snow storage kind of accomplished the desires of the board. Which now what I'm hearing from you is that it creates a concern with water seeping in through the ground and transporting over to 270 and not going through the catch basins. So I think.
Yeah, so, yeah, what you said is half correct, which is that if they were listening and they did hear the request for green space, I also voiced the same concern at the same time.
And you did, I recall that, yes.
Hear that part?
Yes.
But it just boils down to what I would request is that you do not designate snow storage on your pervious area. That's all.
Well, then.
And you have plenty of impervious, so you can store it, anywhere on any of the parking spaces. The purpose of that being then that it's captured through your stormwater system and it's not infiltrated, but it's conveyed off to the surface water.
Well, then I think from the owner's perspective, and I obviously am not speaking for them, but then there's no reason to convert those 17 parking spaces to green space. Leave them as parking spaces and designate it as snow storage, and also designate additional areas of snow storage that are not green space, like on the side of the building on the right.
That's why I get to my original question was what was the purpose of the green space? If the purpose of the green space was for green space, I think that's a great idea. And I think that having that green space, it's not too large, so I think it's pretty reasonable to allow infiltration there, but I don't think it should be used for the purpose of snow storage.
And that can be accomplished.
Yeah, and it's also adjacent to the building on that one on the bottom corner as well, so
Sure.
keeping it away from the building.
Sure. I think they can make those changes.
Anything else, Joel?
No, that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
All right. I had, looking at my questions. So I also had a question about the snow storage, but I think that was covered. So just to recap, the snow storage should be on the impervious surfaces, not the green space. And I think there's still a desire from this board, based on what I've heard, to have some green space like that available. Probably, as Joel mentioned, not too much to increase increase pervious too much, but to keep it around that size.
Understood.
Okay. All right. Next item, let's talk about the sidewalk. I want to make sure that we're avoiding the issue that we saw in the center of town, where there was some discussion at a project about a piece of a project to be determined later. It wasn't really made clear. There was some reliance on DPW and others participating in that discussion, and it never happened, and it came back to hurt the board. So I want to try and avoid that situation again and make sure that we're being really clear about what we want, what we don't want, and also get DPW a little bit more involved in this discussion as well. Because if there's some reliance on them for this, I want to make sure that they're part of that discussion. So, additional thoughts on that?
Well, so I'm thinking maybe we need to ask them, if indeed, which it sounds like it is, they're envisioning sidewalks on both sides, like, what's their time frame for that? Is that something they have any resources available that they could put towards that at this time? And then if so, is it something that, like, if it costs $1,000 and, I'm just making up a number, of course, to build the sidewalk from the crosswalk to the other end of the property, could we figure out some maybe portion of it towards which the owner could make a contribution, which would also probably improve his property in terms of, or her property in terms of, accessibility from surrounding businesses, so that if in the future they had a business where they had tenants who might want to partake of nearby amenities, they wouldn't have to get in their car to drive to the next building or cross a dangerous, busy road twice to get to the next building. So it seems like if we could put the people in a room together and see, maybe have the DPW first say what it is they imagine, second, what's their time frame, third, how much would it cost if they were to do it now, and then see if maybe we could get a contribution from the owner and/or the tenant with the 20-year lease towards that.
Evan, thoughts?
As I see it, the 270 sidewalk is on private property, and then your plan shows the sidewalk on private property. The reason that that's important is that in past, DPW and the planning board has taken a per linear foot contribution towards sidewalks. But DPW builds sidewalks within the right-of-way or obtain an easement on private property. I think the other item that the board needs to consider is what the attorney has described, whereby from Billerica Road, this site slopes down to the parking lot. A sidewalk would require a retaining wall or significant regrading. And if the board's primary concern or interest is minimizing land disturbance, particularly footings with retaining walls, that's probably a 6-8 foot retaining wall. That's going to, quickly create direct conflicts and concerns with. So it is a difficult place to build a sidewalk. An ideal solution would be, is there room within the right-of-way? But that requires DPW direct involvement. To place it on private property, maybe the applicant working with the property owner provides you some sort of concept plan, but it's pretty clear it's going to require retaining walls and/or significant regrading.
And I agree with everything you just said, and I want to make sure we avoid the situation from last time, too, where we're making assumptions and we're not being really clear about what DPW wants and what the long-term vision is, so.
Right. I mean, if DPW is engaged and they understand the retaining wall and associated costs, and they understand the planning board's concern about soil disturbance, they may try to seek obtaining easements in combination with building it within the right-of-way, so that it's on the existing same level as Billerica Road. But like I said, that's going to require someone engaging with DPW.
Could you reach out to Christine and DPW?
Yeah, I could certainly reach out. They will have right-of-way plans for Billerica Road. I'm assuming that there's a survey plan for this property. I don't know if this plan that's been submitted is based upon a survey or not. But DPW should have enough information to, have an initial engagement.
Okay. If we could get them engaged and get some more details as to what they're thinking, what their plans are, we can start incorporating that into our decision.
Is there any sort of easement in the front of that property now? Because I see a metal guardrail across a good portion of it.
I don't think so. I think it's a hard delineation between private property and public property.
Yeah, because that guardrail kind of goes.
Yeah.
Looks like it's off of the line.
Yeah, I mean, there may be a couple feet there, which is, the reason to engage with DPW. DPW likes to build 5.5 foot sidewalks at this point.
If I could make a suggestion, I know this was brought up last time. My client would love if this board could separate these two issues, which is approval of the use, which they've sought, and also separately approval of a site plan. So that for tonight, this board, if they could consider whether or not the use could be approved, then we could continue this hearing and have further discussions, because I can tell, the engineers need to talk, DPW needs to talk to people, and we can refine some of these other issues. If we can at least decide the use issue and table the rest of it, and we can go back and talk to the owner's engineers and figure out a little bit more about this, because they know the site and we don't. And obviously, if they're going to contribute funds, that's a decision they have to make, and we need to see what DPW really wants to do here.
I'm a little hesitant to do that because the conditions come through the special permit as opposed to the site plan.
Well, can't the use be approved with, conditioned upon an acceptable site plan?
We've run into this problem before, and that's what we're trying to avoid, where we've had discrepancies and issues, so we'd like to get it all.
Evan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Are you seeking a formal voted approval?
For the use, just for the use,
Yeah.
just for purposes of zoning.
I mean, what's in front of the board is basically the special permit for the use.
Correct.
I think what you're hearing from the board is, while the sidewalk is not necessarily directly tied to the use, for some members it may be associated with the use. Through this special permit process is really their only regulatory consideration. Unless we can come up with a condition that's part of the special permit approval that, provides predictable outcomes, which at this point I'm not sure we can provide any predictability for any party. The property owner probably wants to do a little bit more due diligence. They have no idea what DPW is suggesting or thinking. The only way to handle this would be if the board didn't want to include the sidewalk as part of any consideration for the special permit.
I mean, frankly, I don't know if it should be, and the reason being is because the building could be occupied right now for other uses without having to address the sidewalk at all. So this use, which is important for this population, is, being held up basically because, obviously for the better of the town, a sidewalk would be great there. But this applicant can't use the property. They can't fund the sidewalk. But some other commercial use could move in there and use 400 spaces, and they won't have a sidewalk. So, I mean, tying the two together, I mean, it doesn't seem fair for this applicant to be held up because of that. Frankly, I mean, the building was built without the sidewalk. I'm not sure why that wasn't raised at that time. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we weren't there.
No, I'm just saying, that would seem to be
Well,
when it should have been addressed.
the next meeting would be 2 weeks from tonight.
And what would be different then?
Well, at that point, between now and then, presumably
We can talk to DPW.
DPW would have looked at it a little bit closer, and maybe the property owner is willing to engage with DPW.
They can make it a part of their condition of their lease, too.
What's that?
They could also make it a part of their condition of their lease that they request something like that.
Sure.
Right, so, I mean, there is, like, yeah, I get
I-
that,
yeah.
like, I understand that you guys don't own the property, but there's ways to request that from the, to get them engaged and get them working together and all of you guys together, so it satisfies everyone, and including us.
I think the
So, like,
complexity here is, even if all three parties agreed to a condition tonight, to Chris's point, there's no details associated with that. And even if the condition said the three parties are gonna work together, the notion as to how you actually build that sidewalk and what it does to the site, we don't have those answers tonight. And it's still not clear to me to what extent the planning board, if the information came back and said, yeah, we all agree we can build a sidewalk, it requires an 8-foot retaining wall with footings that go down and some additional land disturbance, it's not clear to me, and likely others, how the planning board would handle that. Is that going to create other concerns related to soil disturbance that probably no one wants to,
But then we can make that determination. Like,
Right,
that's
so what
the
I'm
whole
saying
thing.
is, if you give it 2 weeks by the July 23rd meeting, we'll at least have a conceptual understanding as to what DPW and the property owners' engineers think is doable.
And if it's, and it could be something that's like, they've looked at it, it's way too, like, costly but at least I feel that we've done our due diligence and everybody's talked, and if it can't be,
We
then
found it
can't
to be a dead end.
Right.
We
If
can't
it
go
can't
The
be,
only way
it
to do
can't
that
be
is
versus-
give it 2 weeks.
And that's my concern too, is that no one's even talked about this, and then it's the same exact situation the board was in last time.
Right.
So just get some answers, and then also allows them to move the snow
At a
storage.
minimum, it could be a condition of the special permit that an easement be granted, if that's deemed appropriate,
It's,
you know.
DPW and the property owner would have to figure that out. There could be a recommendation to the board where both parties say building a sidewalk at that physical location is not feasible,
Feasible,
but
yeah.
they agree to do some sort of contribution to be used in the area.
Yeah, something like that, right.
Yeah, and that's typically how we've handled this.
Yep.
This is a unique situation where the applicant has little or no interest or control over the site, and the property owner has all those interests. But I would suggest, 2 weeks should be enough time to get at minimum DPW to look at it a little bit closer, and ideally the property owner as well.
Are there any other questions or comments?
And do you guys think you can work with that?
2 weeks? I mean, it's another 2 weeks, but yes.
Okay. All right, so Evan, you'll reach out to DPW and connect the parties up. Thank you. Anything else?
No, I guess I just wanted to point out that, my client's obviously concerned with the sidewalk issue holding up their project, and they just want to note that, the property that follows their property doesn't have a sidewalk either, so it's a sidewalk that's really not going anywhere. It's stopping it. It's a longer sidewalk, but it's not getting you to anywhere else. But yeah, thank you. So we'll come back with a revised plan for next time, and hopefully there's some progress with DPW and others. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, I will take a motion.
I move, well, let's see, are we in public hearing at all on this?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Probably have to.
Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this?
Move to continue the public hearing?
Motion by Mike,
Second.
second by Deirdre. All in favor? Joel,
Aye.
Marcy,
Aye.
Deirdre,
Aye.
Anita,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Mike, and I'm an aye. Unanimous.
All right,
All right, we are,
move to continue to,
Thank you, guys. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
oh,
we need a motion to continue?
we just did.
Well, that's the public hearing.
Yeah,
Oh, I guess that covers it all.
and I covered it.
I covered it. We're good.
Next meeting. Thank you, guys.
All right.
All right, next topic is 5157 Middlesex Street and Princeton Street. All right, Joel, Evan, are there anyone on
No one
Zoom
else.
for this?
Nope, just Joel.
Okay. So, if you could pull up, let's go with the slides. So I'm not going to go through all of these slides. Most of these slides are for information purposes only. It's exactly the same information that we had for Kate's Corner, but it also includes the Middlesex parcels. As I mentioned last meeting,
So
Yep.
can I interrupt? I have an issue with that.
with what?
With the fact that it includes the additional parcels. We had a request, I thought we were starting with this main parcel for now. And if not, if we're expanding it, then I think we need to be sending out a butter letters to all the property owners,
I'll get to that in a minute.
okay? And also the stakeholders.
Yes, yeah. So I did have a discussion with Virginia about the inclusion of the Vinyl Square Committee in this discussion. They were going to try and send someone tonight. Unfortunately, they weren't able to. I do plan on attending the Vinyl Square next committee meeting to talk more about this. I don't think we will be able to get this in time for town meeting in the fall. However, I do want to go through the exercise of looking at the parcels in this area to apply this zoning change to see if it would work.
But I think as we're doing that, we need to be including more people in the
Absolutely,
conversation.
absolutely. And that's why I don't think we'll make the fall town meeting. I wanted to get some initial discussions in place tonight, start reaching out to more people through Vinyl Square Committee, through the notifications, and then continue that discussion. But I did want to pressure test the zoning sooner rather than later, like tonight, because we start the public hearings for the zoning next meeting. And so I wanted to, if we see something that might not work, I wanted to make sure that we're tweaking that before we get to that, that public hearing.
Sure.
So this is just a draft. I didn't want to go too far into Vinyl Square because that creates a whole other set of issues that we would need to deal with in terms of overlays and stuff like that. I wanted to take a look at the properties that we are specifically talking about, but also take a look towards the right-hand side of the map, just to, again, pressure test some of the CB Light applications to see if it would work. This doesn't mean this is the final. It doesn't mean that this can't change. But it's really just a matter to pressure test before we start getting into the public hearings on the CB Light discussion next week to make sure it's going to work.
And just, and is the thought process, get, to go to town meeting, get Kate's Corner, get this zoning approved, because that is, you can't do anything unless we get
Right.
the zoning approved. Then get Kate's Corner
Correct.
approved. And then maybe give, like, kind of like a heads up that
Yep.
we're looking at all areas, and we may be back at another town meeting to rezone other areas.
Yeah, that's my thought process, is that we present the CB Light zone as a
yeah.
couple articles to,
Conceptually.
yeah, conceptually get that approved. But in that discussion, I'm likely going to be talking about Kate's Corner and also this area in ways that we've looked at applying it, and it seems like it's going to work. We're looking at applying it in other areas, and we can talk a little bit about those. And then vote on, at town meeting, vote on the zone and the dimensions. And then in a separate vote to change those zonings in Kate's Corner.
Because, you know, having, yeah, that makes sense, because you have the whole audience of town meeting.
Yep.
So you may have, like, people, a lot of people may not know about this, right? And it's a great way to kind of ask them to kind of rethink, like, as opposed to try to do everything at town meeting.
Yep.
Gives them an opportunity to come back to us and say, hey, what about this area? We
Yeah,
thought
it's
about this area.
Yeah, it's a chance for us to make sure that people are seeing that we're thinking about this holistically, making sure that we can apply this in different areas, not just in the one area that we're bringing to town meeting, and make sure that we've looked at a couple different areas to see if it's going to work. Because what I don't want to do is try it in another area after it's approved and see that it doesn't work. I want to make sure that we're trying it in another area first and seeing if we have to tweak it before town
Makes
meeting.
sense.
And then we'll continue with the Vinyl Square discussions, continue with this as long as we need to, and then,
With the neighbors and the
Yep.
abutters and the business owners.
yep,
Okay,
and
what
then bring
about-
it to the following town meeting. I don't think we're gonna get it in time for this town meeting, just based on the Vinyl Square committee timeline.
Now, what are we looking at here?
All right, so these are the properties that I took a look at. All of that area around the mills and the train tracks are IA at this moment. The right-hand side is CB. The
Okay, I'm lost. Where's,
The mills,
the mill is CB,
It was right here.
okay.
The initial request was this building and
Yeah.
this building.
All right,
These
that's why
are-
I was trying to
the-
figure out why that one has
These
question
are,
marks
these
on
are
it.
owned by the same entity.
Trying to, the mills, what is the one?
Where's the
what's
establishment compared
thank
to?
you.
Across the street.
across the street.
Where's the establishment?
Right here,
Across the street, in the pink.
the pink on the bottom.
Oh, okay, see, I'm glad.
It's fli-
I'm
it's like-
glad, okay, I am so glad.
It's flipped because
I am
that
so
river
glad
should
you
be
brought
down
that
at the
up
bottom.
because I thought I was looking at something totally
Isn't it?
different.
Doesn't the
No.
river go?
No.
No, it goes that way.
It goes
No,
that
it
way.
goes down there.
Okay,
Right
Why am
where
I
it
going?
is.
Maybe
It's
I'm
probably
looking
the
at
way
it
you're
wrong.
used to coming through there that you're
Yeah,
seeing
go
it
that way.
differently. Yeah.
I'm upside down.
It's
okay.
because north
You know
isn't
what? When
north.
when we said the mills, I'm thinking the mills at the establishment.
Right.
I'm not thinking across the street.
They're all mills.
That's right, you weren't here for last week.
No, I wasn't. I'm sorry.
You know what, can I back up farther? I'm really sorry, but in the zoning list, under industrial E, number 12, it's the retail sale of goods, the majority of which are produced or undergo processing on the premises. Now, this would have to be, if I'm not mistaken, less than 10,000 square feet, is that right?
Is there a footnote attached to it?
Nope, no footnote.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Okay.
So in IA, there's no.
Not
Okay.
for that particular,
Okay, but why couldn't you have, we don't think that should be by right? The retail sale of, I mean, a yes, is my question. Retail sale of goods, the majority of which are produced or undergoing processing on the premises?
currently is an IA.
I know.
And
I'm-
CB, so that's a good catch. That technically should be. Evan, can you back up 2 slides? On line 12. It's by right in CB and by right in IA. Technically, that should be by right in our new zone.
Yep.
I don't know if that was a mistake or if we just missed that.
All right, hold on. Let me go. Are you keeping the master?
I'm keeping it.
Okay. All right, because I missed it last week. All right.
Okay,
I can update that.
sorry.
No, great catch.
All right, so if you go to the top left, currently that wedge shape between Middlesex and Princeton is currently RC.
The one that says stays RC?
Yep. So anything that says stays, like top middle would be stays RM, the right would be stays CB. What I found is that in the industrial section across the street from the mills, across Middlesex Street from the mills, in the top near the RM, all of those are single family or single family residences.
So like 13 to 19 to 22, that property?
Those are all
They're all
residential.
residential.
Okay.
Um,
And you want to put them in, you're conceptually now only thinking of changing those to the light?
No.
To CB
No, 'cause
light?
they're
changing
IAs right
RC.
now. Currently,
Okay.
those
They're
are
industrial
IA.
now, so to fix that conflict,
Okay,
they
got
would
it. Got
switch
it.
over
I'm
to
sorry.
RC. So RC would essentially extend from where it is now down Middlesex a bit.
See, it says right by there, says stays IA. What's over there?
So anywhere that it stays IA near the river, that's all either railroad owned, electric company owned. And so I'm assuming those we would want to keep industrial.
Yeah.
They have a lot of good frontage.
Huh?
They have a lot of good frontage because that's the railroad. Like
Yeah.
when you're looking at it, it's all
Kind of like the cows
Space
in
they have.
Ireland.
And I can't expect that we would be able to change that easily from anything
No.
other than IA.
No.
No, I'm like, but like, does, like, I guess does it matter if it's CB Light or IA?
What's on there now?
Like I was like,
Railroad.
is
The
it
railroad
just,
itself.
if it's
So
just
what
the
is?
like, my point is, if it's just the railroad, then why don't we just keep it all, like, just so we don't have IA, like, A in those, like, I guess, like, they can't, like, if, I don't know, 20 years, they decide to pull up the railroad and want to sell it, then you have 2 industrial spots over there.
I know,
That's-
I find that weird too, but I don't know, I couldn't figure out if railroads are allowed in.
Yeah, because eventually that's going to become maybe like the MBTA, right?
Yeah.
Down the line.
The
So what you
railroads
want
are
to put along
there,
it?
So it really doesn't matter what it is.
But what are they going to build
They're
next
not-
to it?
They're not going
Right.
to pull it out.
Don't you
just
want to
like
control
might.
that?
zoning.
Yeah,
If-
so
Well, they
that-
might, in which case they couldn't put it back.
Right, but if it ever goes defunct,
Yeah.
then it might become a bike trail.
What's currently on those
Well-
2 parcels that say CB Light?
Which ones?
The ones just below where it says stay IA, you get this 13, 19, 20.
So 13, 19, 20, I believe, is one of the mills, mill property.
Okay, and then 14, 19,
1492, I don't remember offhand. It was either mill or another.
Because those are, we're looking to change those from IA to CB Light. That's why I couldn't remember either what was currently on those 2 properties.
I don't think there's something physical on those right now.
No, it's
Just, they're owned by,
yeah, let me double check.
Well, it looks like there's a picture of a track. Well, I guess.
well, the train track I know runs through it, because it cuts
Yeah.
across Middlesex Street there.
So 14, 19, 1 is railroad.
We should ask our attorney about that.
14, 19, 1 is railroad. 13, 19, 20 is Chelmsford Mills. 14, 19, 2 is Ragtime Realty Trust.
Okay.
And then do you have 14, 19, 3
That was
called
my
out up
next
there?
question.
That's railroad.
That's
But
railroad?
What are you
What
planning
is
on
it,
keeping?
14,
on?
19, 3?
14, 19, 3.
Is that one going to, right now on this plan, is that going
Yeah.
to stay IA
Yeah.
with 14, 19, 4?
That 14, 19, 2, like, that could be awesome, like a little riverfront.
Shopping.
Bounded by
Walk,
railroad on all
shopping.
sides.
CB.
Oh,
Could have-
my sister-in-law
Could have
lives next
bridges
to the
like
village.
Boston,
God, it was
make a
great.
bridge.
Very
But getting
convenient.
back to like what Anita said though, can we have railways, can they be in CB Light? Like, because if they could, then
Yeah, why
That
not?
looks
why
like
not
train
limit
track
it?
run through 14, 19.
Evan, do you have any idea?
Can we ask the lawyer?
No, but it's already there, so I think, like, it's in it, like,
Yeah,
it's like regardless of what
The-
we zone it, it's there, it's grandfathered.
I think the
kind of-
perspective you want to take on zoning is to what extent would accessory uses associated with rail operations be allowed under your zoning? So freight yards, maintenance yards, things of that nature. The railroad itself has an easement, that's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 14,
However,
19, 3's got
however,
track.
Build a
if
freight
they-
yard.
if they wanted to, build buildings, maintenance yards, storage yards,
That's a good point.
freight yards,
Yeah, not by the.
local zoning would apply.
Okay.
All right, CB
I
Light.
see leaching and everything else you want to avoid. No leaching.
So I've heard a couple people suggest that those should convert over to CB Light. Thoughts?
Joel.
Anyone disagree?
So then we would also change the stays IA 19.3 and 19.1 to CB Light. Is
Yep.
that what we're talking about?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
I think 19.4 too, right?
Yeah, 19.4.
Where's 19.4?
It's
Oh, yeah.
to the right.
To
up
the
there.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
one
19.3,
too.
19.4, 19.1, which currently are not labeled. Well, 19,
So essentially it would all be CB Light in there. Anything IA would be CB Light.
and then we'll have to make sure what our CB Light says about freight yards. I'm pretty sure it doesn't allow it.
The other areas to point out, between the CB Light and the Stays RC, there's a multifamily there, tucked away next to the mill.
Where's that 1335-1?
Is that the RM?
1336-2.
Oh,
It's the one with underneath the RM.
It is the RM on the left.
Right there.
oh,
Yep.
yeah. What's 1335-1?
Where is that one?
About on the other side of Middlesex Street in that little triangle.
By Edwards Place, I think.
Edwards loops around it.
Not seeing it.
They're asking about this one.
Oh, that one. That one is a residence.
Wow.
So that's
big.
why that one's RC.
That's why I put those as RC.
Mhm.
That's a single residence right there?
I think it might be a duplex.
Mhm.
The question marks in the bottom near the mills on Princeton Street, that's electric company.
Oh, 1336-8.
That
Eight,
one is one of the
10,
mills, so
and 3.
this, because that's a question mark and the 1336-3 is also a question mark, I wasn't sure which buildings were included in this proposal from the owner and which ones were not, so I just put the main building as CB Light, and then I put question marks on those two
Yeah, but if we're gonna-
ancillary
I
buildings.
think it's a different owner.
But what is it currently?
I don't know.
Like, what's the current zone in that area?
That's
Is it
IA.
Norway?
IA.
Can you slice a building like that with different zones, or do they have to be the same?
I would just put the
Well,
whole
that's the
area,
same building.
I would just put the whole area CB Light.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, I can't.
Well,
even-
the question, though, that we have, I think, is what's in there now. If it's significant warehousing, aren't really able to do CB Light.
Which building are you referring to?
1336-8 and
1336-8.
1336-3.
1336-8 has the aerial yoga and the
Oh, those are
batting
the batting
cages. Yes.
Yeah, so that's,
That's,
that
that's commonly owned with the large mill. That's the property owner who made the request.
Okay,
Oh.
so that should be CB Light.
Yeah.
1336-3 is separately owned. Best of my understanding, that building has been historically used as self-storage. At the next zoning board meeting, the property owner has an administrative appeal asking the zoning board to overturn the building commissioner's determination that an auction house is not a permitted use. So that gives you a sense as to, the types of uses that the current property owner is contemplating for that property.
I mean, again, it's not heavy industrial.
That's
Like, that's not heavy
It's
industrial.
not, but it's,
This is,
Would an auction house be allowed under CB Light?
That he has question marks on.
I don't think we have that on our use table.
I don't think so. I don't remember hearing about an
Evan,
auction
what-
house.
is there an analogous use for auction house?
I mean, there's the closest thing that Jose and I thought was in our zoning bylaw was some sort of iteration of retail sales.
Yeah.
Like antique shops, like
so-
the multi.
Currently, under IA, retail sales is not a permitted principal use.
Is it in CB Light?
Yeah.
It would be in CB
Yeah,
Light.
So
like,
we would
that
want
would
this
make more
changed.
sense to me, that, like, and they're asking for,
If they're going to the zoning board looking for that, this would be better. fit
this would be
them.
for them, yeah. And it would make, I mean, again, like an antique shop, there would,
What is 1336-5? Is that what used to be Brick House? Because it's not listed as labeled as changing in any way.
The little parcel to the right
Yeah,
of the
that is
three.
the former, yep, the pizzeria.
That's not Brick House anymore?
No. I don't think they own any of them anymore.
Now, looking at the uses that the owner who proposed the CB Light sent to us, I do have some concerns because there are warehouse uses there and we don't permit that in CB Light.
But they would be grandfathered in, right?
Those uses would become pre-existing non-conforming.
But then if that business owner left and the site was vacant, then a new business coming in would have to conform to the zoning?
No, the pre-existing non-conforming use can continue as long as it's not abandoned for a period of more than 2 years.
How big are those warehouse spaces?
They look like they range because the numbers are like
6,000, 5,000, 1,000, so they have different sizes.
I think the largest I saw was 16-ish.
oh,
No,
13,530. The granite.
16,224. LTD refreshments is at 16,224. So I think that's the
Artisan
biggest
bread
one.
So it looks
But
like
those
there's a
don't-
few.
Wait a minute, but these buildings don't have major loading docks, do they?
Limited infrastructure.
Yeah.
They're right, like, so this is like, again, like, unless they have, like, I think,
Yes, it's not traditional warehousing.
it's not traditional warehousing that we think of.
Right.
Like, this is.
Not
like,
high volume.
Right.
The light.
This is storing
Lowell
stuff.
Historic Society is listed as a
This is-
warehouse.
This is storing things.
Yeah, I saw that too and was like, what?
Well, we can ask the property owner to give us a little bit more information on these warehousing businesses.
Yeah, I think if they're storage for an associated retail use,
Like the bakery
Yeah.
place.
I think in most cases that'd be fine. The only, and I think in most cases that would be
Sauce.
accurate from what I saw, but I think one of them that I did see was, where did I see it? Granite Group Wholesalers.
Yeah, but again, unless they come, unless they,
Storing granite.
right, like, unless they go and change the infrastructure, which would then require a site review from, like, they would have to come in front of the planning board. Like, even if they're grandfathered in, I just don't see it being, like, a major traffic, like,
Oh, no, I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that based on our definition of warehouse,
Yeah, but they would be grandfathered in.
The other thing we can do is, we can
'Cause you
ask the
never
property
think
owner
of
just to make
associates
sure they
as a warehouse.
understand that if this zoning were to go through, certain uses and tenants would become pre-existing non-conforming. I think they understood that,
okay.
and I think long-term, they preferred having the opportunities under CB Light.
which involves more retail
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I don't, and, I mean, I think mill stores are perfect for that.
Yeah.
If you're not, like,
I agree. I just want to make sure that we're not
no,
Pigeonholing them,
Yeah.
right? You don't want to make
yeah,
sure they're not
something
stuck.
unintended consequences.
Yeah, no, because like, as you said, like, looking at some of these, you got Orthopedic Associates that's listed as warehouse, like, what's,
They're putting knee
Probably,
braces.
probably patient records.
Maybe, or
that's, so that's, it
$800
depends
knee
on what the,
braces.
like,
Exactly. We
what
don't,
their uses
right,
when you say
right.
warehouse, so that's
Right.
definitely gonna make a big difference.
now, so.
What is a wood operation?
I do have a question for the pink area, which is not included. Are we
Mhm.
gonna look at that? In a more, like, is this what you're talking about, like, looking at it?
I think last time, didn't we say we were going to take little pieces of this?
Yes.
Like, and fix it, like, not go after everything at once,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
tackle them smaller bits.
But that goes to a larger discussion with the area residents and Vinyl Square
Square,
Committee about what the long-term vision is. This is really specifically targeting this discussion, industrial zone areas that could be CB Light.
Abutting residential. And where
residential.
you reduce the conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do we have any more IA up in Vinyl Square?
We do, except it's not really abutting residential. It's,
Isn't that
you
back
weren't
by
here
the
last
softball
meeting.
fields?
It's near the softball fields.
Down the hill.
and,
the other mill.
You know that
Yeah,
weird
the
building
other
down
mill.
the hill?
That everyone thought was
Wadden.
abandoned.
Yes, you thought was abandoned.
That you didn't think there was anything there, but there is.
There's something there?
Yeah.
We all had this discussion like 2 weeks ago, we all thought it was abandoned.
Okay, I really have to get out of East Chelmsford.
So I still have just a couple questions here because I'm still confused. That one at the bottom of where CB Light is of the warehouse that has little question marks on them. The one where you said, I think, was it the utility company or
Which
something?
number?
I can't see it. It's like 1336.
Question marks?
133610,
That bottom, yeah, the one that's attached to it. What is the intent with that
that
one?
weird cutout one.
That's actually a separate property, and it's owned by the electric company.
So is it,
But it's
are the
part of the same
buildings?
building?
Could be the infrastructure for the cell
so,
tower,
yeah.
I think.
I think so, but I'm not 100% sure.
So what would be the zoning there?
I don't know. That's why I have
so,
a question mark there.
so my other question though is, can you have, when two buildings touch like that, can you have a piece of a building a different zone than the rest of the building? I don't know.
Can.
You can?
Yeah.
Do we have other
Well, they're
places like that?
technically
We have
different
that on
properties.
Monmouth Street, there's property that has half of it's in something and half of it's in something else.
Well, in Kate's Corner, we had half a property that was,
But the buildings were
I don't
touching?
recommend it,
No.
though. I don't think it's something we should, like,
no, but,
like,
but part of
strive
the reason
toward.
why I
End
have
of
it
my
a
age
question
is right
mark is
there.
because it's, if it was just a mill building, it'd be an easier discussion, but because it's the electric company, I'm not sure what that would fit in.
So where does that
We have
fit?
utility on our,
No,
Well, those types of utilities are typically exempt from zoning.
Yeah.
so then we don't have to worry about
If
it.
it's cell tower, it's still exempt from zoning, but not to the same extent as like a substation.
So why don't we
utility.
just make it CB Light?
Yes, you just make it the same. What about the 1336-5? What's the intent with that one? The pizza place that's not?
CB Light would allow retail and restaurants, I think.
Yeah.
So we're just thinking this whole area, CB Light.
Yeah.
yeah, just do the whole darn thing.
By the way, I don't know if you guys noticed, but Bay State Auction is in that building, so it
Yeah, I
makes
saw
sense.
that.
They want to do auction in that building.
Yeah. It's probably the same people. I
Oh,
saw
and
that too.
13363?
In 30, well, on this paper.
Oh, okay. So it's in the,
And then, yeah,
Yep.
to the 3.
okay.
No, I like the direction that we're talking, like moving the railroad area to CB Light, changing the other areas to CB Light. Joel, what do you think? You're being quiet.
Just no question marks to CB Light, and I think we have a place to start.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, this is the quietest he's been.
So my goal tonight, again, was to just pressure test the CB Light zone, making sure that we're not
Doing anything crazy.
having any unintended consequences with the uses in the warehouse. I think we've covered that. It looks like we're able to flex this zoning a little bit to take care of all the IA here. So what I will do is I will make those changes to this slide deck. For both the table, I'll make that correction, and for the map. I will bring it to the Vinyl Square Committee, I think end of July is their meeting.
21st.
Yeah,
And I
21st.
It's on a Monday.
I would bring it to them with the kind of, I mean, you know what to say, but.
And I'm there.
But
I'm there with
this
them.
is conceptual,
Yes.
and we are looking for your feedback.
Yeah,
before
I had a
we
long
go any
discussion with
further
Virginia
this.
already on this,
Yeah.
about the approach. And she's fine with that approach. So yeah, she was starting to talk to some of the members already to get their feedback and input, and to see if anyone could come. I also offered to meet with them one-on-one before the meeting if people wanted to meet with me. I haven't had any takers on that yet. But I figured,
Meeting?
what's that?
When is the Vinyl Square?
21st?
A Monday.
I'd have to look. Yeah, they're on Mondays.
Yeah, I think it's
They moved them
21st.
around because we don't.
So yeah, and like I said, it's not final. This is just a starting point. We can have further discussions around the rest of Vinyl Square as well. But really for our purposes, to make sure that the CB Light zone was going to work in one other area besides Kate's Corner before town meeting, and I think we've accomplished that tonight.
And it will be on July 21st. So,
Thank you.
welcome.
You did a really great job, Chris,
Yeah.
Oh,
which
thanks.
was good.
All right. Next item, Kate's Corner. We I think beat that one to death. In addition to the edit I will make on that slide deck. So we'll all sit there.
Massage.
All right, massage establishments. So if you could pull up
Wrong one.
the last, yeah, that one.
This one?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So what I did, I'm starting to get all the slides together for our public hearing and for other discussions. So essentially what I did here is I took the current definition. Next slide is the change. So we're essentially replacing the entire definition of massage in section 1, and in D, changing some of the terminology there.
What did we change for, hold on.
Number 1, it's essentially a wholesale take out the definition and replace it with the one from the state's definition. I keep forgetting you weren't here last week when we
Sorry,
discussed all this.
I know, and I went on vacation, so my mind
No,
is
you're
like
allowed.
totally.
So yeah, essentially, the recommendation from town council was to take the state definition of massage, put it in, and then reference the state licensing of massage therapists in D, as opposed to Board of Health. Since the Board of Health doesn't license them, the state does. Keeps the rest of the bylaw intact.
Okay.
And then the use table change, the current is the Board of Appeals, changed to by right. Thank you. Any questions or comments on these?
Looks good.
All right. Moving on. ADU zoning changes. I'm really happy that town council provided that email clarification because I was really confused about what we had to do from that document.
I think I read it 3 times. I was like, oh.
I was reading.
I'm not going to law school.
Yeah.
And so essentially it's one deletion and one recommended change to address a second potential deletion from the Attorney General. So the deletion is on this slide, deleting the bold and underlined text. And the next slide gives you the updated text with that deleted. I'm still trying to understand what that change
Mean?
Yeah.
means.
Well, it's kind of redundant to say the lots and dwellings for the district. It's just for the district.
I guess, but
It's like extra words.
Evan, do you have any insight onto this? Because I could not figure out why that change.
The original language just provides clarity that the dimensional standards are applicable to both the lot and the dwelling. So the AG, for some reason, is asking us to delete reference to both of those, principal dwellings and lots, and simply just refer to the district.
But doesn't that still imply that
Lots
the
and
dimensional
dwellings?
standards
Yes.
are applicable to anything on the properties within that district?
Well, it goes on to say, as set forth in the dimensional table. So new structures will require compliance with the dimensional table. However, any existing dimensions associated with lot area and frontage are not applicable. And they weren't intended to be applicable.
Okay.
So I think that's what the AG is indicating, that you are not to apply dimensional standards to the lot size. If it's undersized, you can still put an ADU on. If it doesn't have the adequate frontage, you can still put an ADU on.
Okay. I guess.
Yeah, because if you look closely at the final regulations, it talks about non-compliant lots is not a factor for determining ADUs.
So they can literally build right up to the edge?
No, they're still required to comply with setbacks. Those are the dimensional requirements for the structures.
Okay. And then,
What about FAR? Do they still have to comply with FAR?
Yeah, that was in that's in the bylaw. That was, the AG did not strike that.
So it's just our first set of dimensional requirements that have to do with the lot.
Correct.
Okay. Then I can see why you need to make that change.
maybe you can explain it to me some night over a beer, Joel, 'cause I have no idea. Or I may ask you to come up at town meeting and help me explain it. All right. The next one is the recommended deletion. So in 195.61C4, we have this text on slide.
Where am I going?
Slide 5.
No, you're in families. We're still on the ADU.
Oh,
You
my
clicked on the wrong one.
apologies.
Yeah,
Back up.
back up one. All right, so in C4, the section that was a problem was this one here on slides 5. Actually, no. Am I?
Yes, slide 5.
Yeah. Okay. Because it also talks about section 195, 8C and 8E. And so what the Attorney General had concerns about is the applying of the special permit, because even though we don't mention it in this text, we do mention it in the sections that we refer to in that section. So instead of the text on slide 5, now as I'm going through this, I'm realizing I have to update these slides to make it more logical. So instead of the text on slide 5, we need to update it with the text on slide 7 with the new text there.
Which is what is underlined.
Yeah.
That's just addition to.
Yeah.
We're just adding that to. So before it was as applied by the plan, hold on.
Was it removing the applicability of
It's
that?
removing this, provided that when a determination is required, not substantially more, I think is being
Okay.
deleted.
I have
Okay, so
to
I
I have
would-
to edit these slides a little bit more then.
Yeah, so my recommendation is take what the current wording is, do a
Yeah.
strike through,
Yep.
and then add what they want to add.
I think I didn't realize that it was also deleting
Deletion.
some.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we're deleting some text in C4 and adding the underlined piece.
Question, Evan, do you think that it seems to me that these changes were made by the Attorney General, but have not in any way related to the appeal?
That was my next point that I was going to get to. So,
The
go ahead, Evan.
the letters that the AG received,
Yeah.
yeah, the AG did not strike the prohibition on a second driveway, nor did the AG strike the within the front yard.
Front yard, yeah.
Yeah.
So these were just the issues that the AG had
Correct.
with our text,
Yep.
which they took a little longer to do because they had too many to do. And they did
Well, they
ours
did-
specifically because we
We
also
did
had
grant an
appeal.
extension, specifically related to the resident letters they received.
Right. But their changes didn't have.
Ultimately, correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All of the other areas that the residents' concerns were approved.
Right, that's what I thought.
Yep. So these were the only changes that the AG is asking for.
Yeah, I would just make sure we make that point.
Now, Evan, the deletion that the AG made, does that automatically take effect? Is the AG's office approval of our bylaws with those deletions? Or do we have to reapprove them at
We need
town-
to go back to town meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Which is what this is intended
Yeah.
to do.
Okay. Thanks.
So are you going to bring that one back next week, like clear? Or are you
Yeah.
just, not
Well, next week
but
we
2
start
weeks?
the public hearing on these anyway, I believe,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
Yep.
yes. Or next meeting, I should say.
Yeah, next meeting.
No, we're not having
Next
a
week.
meeting next week, are we? Because I don't want to be there.
Fucking squirrel.
Everyone's coming.
All right, next one, family definition.
Oh, fun. Can't wait for
So,
this one.
with this one, we have some options. So, I'm not going to go through all these slides.
Thank you.
On slide 4, I did extensive research of other towns in Massachusetts. About 100 to 150 of the 351 municipalities use the definition I have here. Slightly different than the one we proposed, but not by much. I gave some examples of some of the towns. I also mentioned that some towns and cities have added the text onto that other phrase.
As distinguished from.
Yeah, as distinguished from.
Could you add in like percentages to those two to make
No,
it?
I did not.
No, I'm wondering how to make these people want
Well,
to
I
be
think we
like,
should send them a
okay.
special invitation to come to our public hearing and have them vent it out here
Versus town meeting?
versus town meeting.
And then a few towns have kept the blood relative definition and then added the word or,
That's fine.
and then the proposed definition. Only a few.
But I mean, the after the or part encapsulates family too.
Yes, it does.
Like it's redundant.
Yes,
Yep.
it does.
So let's just leave it.
So the reason why, and go to the next slide, the reason why municipalities have used this language is because it's actually complies with the Fair Housing Act. It is provided as model language by a number of planning organizations. MAPC is one example. It's simple to deal with, and it's actually following the legal guidance in primarily Commonwealth versus Jaffe. And if you go to the next slide, Commonwealth versus Jaffe does not provide an actual definition, but it actually asks for these 4 components of any definition. It actually recommends that you use the single housekeeping unit language, describe the functional aspects of that housekeeping unit, avoid requiring kinship, and emphasizes the unit's stability, permanency, and cohesion so that it's not related to more of a boarding house scenario.
And there's no size limit.
Correct. It actually, and that's my next slide,
Sorry.
actually the size limit conflicts with a number of fair housing requirements.
As a cap, I see.
And so the recommendation is to eliminate any of the caps and limits from zoning and keep those in other regulations like health and safety and things like that.
What was the, I don't remember, but what were people's main concern against the definition of family that they had during that meeting that then you can then turn this to
Generic
swing on?
outrage.
There were two primary concerns. The state shouldn't be telling us what to do, and we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to Brookline.
Okay, so you added Westford in there. Is there other towns that you could highlight? Because you have the big group of towns, right? Are there other towns you could highlight that
The
Chelmsford gets along
ones
with?
that I listed
Westwood, Billerica,
first
Drake
are
Kids.
the ones that are more
Closest to us.
closely
They're similar.
analogous to us.
Can we just, do me a favor, can we list out, all in bullet point, like one by one, all, how many you said, 100, 150? Can we list them all out? And I think we should.
No,
go
I
through
can't
them.
actually.
I'll list them out and just go flip and flip and flip.
No.
No, but you got to think. Wait, but like, wait, hold on a second. But think about this. You're gonna have people. There's a few people with certain things that they're doing, right? So how do you take their opinions and make sure that you're talking about it to make them okay with it? Like, what can you say to help with that?
I think certain people were not going to, ever.
Well,
No matter.
You only need
Well, because it seemed like it
a-
jumped one way and the other.
What,
were
a
there.
2/3?
Yeah, but
I think we
what
just
you
don't-
did, yeah, I was gonna say what you did, I like what you did with it because you've shown that it's based on the Supreme Judicial Court's
Yeah.
decision, so we're not
Yeah.
just
We're not
coming up
out on
with
a
this,
limb.
You know, that there's some pretty, and
Why is
we
it-
can always defer to town council if
Yeah.
representatives
And-
question.
Why,
Remember,
why
it
is it
was-
good for them?
Remember, it was change, so people don't like change.
No, I get it, but
And it was and we kind of surprised them on it. Like, again, they weren't prepared for it, even though we've been talking about it and it was in pre-town meeting and all that. Like, people heard it for the first time and just kind of, I think,
but what does this change allow? Like, how does this change benefit those people,
It
the
doesn't.
town?
It keeps us from getting sued.
It makes us
But well,
legal.
legal compliance, right? This whole thing. I think I heard you talk about that at the last meeting. But I mean, it's putting us into a more compliant manner. I mean, I don't know if you can push that a little bit more.
I will try.
I don't know. I'm just thinking. I'm thinking about ways of like, how do you get people? Like, you need to connect to people
Yeah.
and move people. So how do you do that with what they were pushing back on? But then you'll have other people standing up. But if you have like a clear thing, because nobody wants to be told what to do. So how do you make it clear, easy, not
Well, this
hurtful?
is very inclusive language.
No, I think so.
and I think that's the problem for some people.
I think that came up, if I remember right, because the guy
They
shut
also
them
said
down.
that any of those family arrangements or non-family arrangements are already allowed. So while some people may have been concerned about inclusivity, they also acknowledge that the current definition allows for those arrangements.
Actually, it doesn't.
I think it says family or no more than 4 unrelated. So that's where people were saying that you
Right,
could.
but if you have a father with 2 kids, a mother
Understood.
with 2 kids,
No, understood.
they're,
But
they
it seemed
don't-
like there was a segment of the people who voted against it acknowledging that the current definition accommodates many, if not all, arrangements. And then there was a core group of people opposed who just didn't want to change the definition.
Yeah.
No, and then I think if criticism comes up, we just try to explain that we're not trying to change, like, probably everybody in that room had a different idea in their mind of what is a family. Some were trying to some were trying to stick to the idea of this traditional family where everyone was related, but I think we just come back to the town's not out checking housing units to see who lives there, and so it's kind of unenforceable, and we're just trying to, again, avoid legal disputes and just
We're
come back to
taking
that.
family altogether out of it.
Evan, can you go to slide 8?
I was going to say, which one do you like?
So these are all our alternatives. The initial one that we proposed at town meeting, the one that is the simple generic common definition, or the one that also includes details from the Jaffe case.
The second one seems a little bit more personable.
More
with some of the
what?
language. More personable with some of the language, because it's talking about, access to common living,
Yeah.
cooking, and eating areas versus just to a single housekeeping unit, which I like the straightforward language, but I mean, the other one might be a little bit softer for people.
Yeah.
I think alternative two is just, it's very defined, here it is.
I mean, there's no practical difference between the two.
I don't
No.
think so either, but I think,
I
to me, the
think it's
stability,
weird to talk
permanence, and
about
cohesiveness,
stability.
including that,
Yeah.
allows for some of the
Yeah.
concerns that people had about this also applying to use cases where we don't where it's more like a boarding house.
Right.
I think the Jaffe recommendations kind of address that.
Yeah.
So it tightens it up so that those cases can't happen, but it does keep the family
But doesn't- but
inclusivity.
it- hold on, but that's defining family? And we don't have the word,
No.
No, I think we've had to take the word family out of most of this.
It's who's in a multifamily unit, dwelling unit.
So this would be the definition of family.
no. Okay, and go back to the towns have what percentage of what? What do they have?
100 to 150 out of 351.
I mean, it's an estimate, based on a report I found, but it is roughly a third to 45% use roughly that definition with some small variation.
So they have one or more persons occupying a dwelling unit and living together as a single housekeeping unit.
With potentially some slight variations like I've noted here.
Which she extended out further with the alternative two there with
So I like,
details
What
from
if we did
Jaffe.
it in between?
Like,
One
I-
or more persons occupying a dwelling unit who share access to common living, cooking, and eating areas, living together as a single housekeeping unit, period, stop.
Yeah, because it sounds like you want to get rid of like stability,
Permanence, and
'Cause I guess those
cohesiveness.
are-
It seems judgmental.
no, but, so I was,
I mean, that's a compromise. I mean, that's a compromise.
I
Could
would
be family not being cohesive.
Instead of that, I like the simplicity of one or more persons occupying a dwelling unit and living together as a single housekeeping unit, as distinguished from a group of occupying a boarding house, group home, lodging, and calling that out. I like those two pieces together.
My only concern with that is, do we have those terms defined in our bylaws? I think we have boarding house.
Yeah, let's not go there.
Well, we have boarding house or group, like,
We have boarding house, lodging house, hotel.
all right, get rid of fraternity and club.
We may even have a club or fraternity.
I mean,
I think that's a nice step.
Oh.
Because I wouldn't want to add that if we're not defining what those
Yeah.
are.
I like what Deidre said with cutting off the end. It's still personable. The thing is, you still need to connect with people and make them want to vote. So how do you do that?
Yeah, but you're getting rid of the word blood, and I think that's,
Which one?
you're getting rid of
Getting rid of the
word family.
related by blood, marriage,
Yeah.
adoption,
Anita,
foster, legal
the
guardianship.
concern I have also about adding those specific cases is that what if there are other cases that we haven't thought of and listed
Okay,
there? So that's why if we add the stability, permanence, and cohesiveness, or some component of that, that already eliminates the boarding house, group home, lodging house, because those are more temporary living
Yeah.
situations.
So what else could you say?
Well, that's why Jaffe case recommends including that type of language.
Yeah.
Where there's emphasizes unit stability,
Next
permanence,
slide. Done with
cohesion.
this.
I know, just when I think of stability, now that Deidre's mentioned it, there's a lot of people in a home that's probably not stable. So
Well, we could eliminate that word and just permanence and cohesiveness.
But if roughly a third of the towns have it, and you can go back to a legal decision, then it shouldn't be a heavy lift for town council to defend
Yeah.
it, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like, that's the beauty of using that decision, in my mind.
Yep.
I agree.
what does Joel think?
Joel?
I know, he's been very quiet tonight.
I was wondering, well, one, how do you enforce this? In the sense of,
We
if
don't
somebody
have to- that's a
is
building
running a boarding
inspector.
house out of their home, you know, and you're saying, oh, we're a family, then how does the zoning enforcement officer even tell? I was just wondering about that in general. But overall, I mean, was the concern that essentially what we're doing is we're opening the door to any kind of a living arrangement like a boarding house or what have you that could be anywhere? Or is it more of a culture, issue where you're taking sort of a traditional definition of something and now you're defining it as something else? Because if it's that, then I'm wondering why we would even keep the word family. I mean, if people have associations with the word family that they don't like it being redefined, what we're trying to do is we're just trying to define, how do you describe what is living within a household? And so if we just remove the word family and replace it with something like household unit or something like that, then we don't run afoul of that issue. Because most of what we're talking about is complying, right, with the legal requirement. I doubt that the federal government is defining what a family is there. I think what they're defining is these are the characteristics of what you can not discriminate against, and that we can take those things and we can put them into a definition, and what those characteristics are together, we don't have to call family. We can call it something else.
Now you're making me
Like a housing
to
oc-
do
what
more
would we call
research.
it? Housing occupancy unit?
Housing occupancy.
I mean, I kind of thought, and maybe I'm making an inappropriate jump, but I thought we were starting off from the point that multifamily has family in it. So now, who are the occupants of the multifamily unit that constitute the family?
But even in a multifamily, they're really families that are living in it, per
Well,
se.
right.
So there's no way of, as Joel says, enforcing who is living in these.
Well, we don't have to worry about the enforcement.
So that was just something that crossed my mind as far as enforcement goes. I was more wondering, since if we're taking a term that has traditionally been understood one way and now we're turning it to use it for some other means, then one option is to take the new definitions and apply it, or the other thing is just to change the word altogether.
But
And
what
so
word would you use?
Family could easily be replaced by household unit.
So Joel, in my research, I did see a couple towns define it as family or household unit. But it still needs to be defined because, like Deirdre said, if you're talking about a multifamily building,
Yeah, what does family mean?
The household unit building.
yeah, but then we have to change all our definitions, all our terms in the bylaws.
Well, if you're gonna take a look at the definition of dwelling and dwelling unit. Dwelling refers to single and two-family and multifamily. Dwelling unit uses the term housekeeping unit. So,
What was the purpose of this again? What are we trying to do? Can we go back to the start? I'm confused now.
The purpose,
This
you
Was
can't define family
okay, where do we have it defined?
as a
blood relation,
Right.
kinship type of unit. And based on fair housing practices and AG review, that is
All right, then I say pick number 2.
alternative number 2.
Yeah, can I make a motion that we vote on which one we're gonna
I'm
pick?
good with number 2.
And just call
Are you
it.
good with number 2 without the word stability?
Oh, yeah, I don't care.
care whether
I don't
it's there
care.
or
Just,
not.
yeah, like whatever you want. Like that is my vote, and I stand by you 110%.
I can't vote.
We're not trying to reenact the culture wars. We're trying to keep our zoning legal
Compliant.
and defensible.
Yep, you just.
Because otherwise, all through our
see.
zoning book, we have
Practically
everything
speaking, what
defined
all
in
of
terms
this
of
means
family.
is if somebody drives by and they don't see 10 Harley Davidsons and a bunch of guys in colors, they're going to call it a family.
Yeah.
It's only ever going to be dealt with from an administrative point of view if something really radical other is going on with the property. The rest of it's irrelevant.
I'd say my personal opinion based on the Jaffe decision, because then it gives the town backup.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yep.
Okay.
Right, but let's get rid of stability.
All right.
All right, take a vote? Or
yeah.
do we need to vote?
I'll do a roll call. All in favor of alternative 2, removing the word stability. Joel?
I'm going to abstain because
What?
I do think that the definition is right. So I do think that those words are the right words to use. I just don't think we should be using the word family anymore.
Wait, but isn't that number 2? You got me confused, Joel. Hold
He
on.
thinks we shouldn't be defining family.
Yeah.
No. What I'm saying is, well, we're agreeing on our definitions for the word family.
Right.
And what I'm saying is I agree
Oh.
with the definition. I do think our zoning should be built around that definition. I just don't think our zoning should include the word family.
Family in it, got
I
it.
think that should change to something else.
Okay, I agree with
That's
that,
what-
but let's take one step first.
That'd be a lot more work.
That's going to be a ton of work.
Yeah, and I
This back to
really
town
don't want to go
council.
to the town meeting
But I,
until we can get this
DEI
piece
thing.
over.
but I do agree. I mean that with
Yeah.
what Joel's saying.
I do
Because
too.
why are we
I
having
think
it
we
still?
all do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
we're
but-
getting stuck.
But we
Can
can't
we
get this
vote?
one over the hoop, we're not gonna be able to change.
Yeah.
Single, like, could you imagine trying to go in front of town meeting, trying to change single family,
Multi-family.
family, and this definition all at the same time?
No, it would never work.
Never work. Let's do
right.
one thing first, and then not.
Joel, you abstained?
Sorry, just trying to get the mute button to work. That's great.
Okay, thanks. Saritha?
I have no vote, don't I?
That's right. Marcy?
Aye.
Deirdre? Anita?
I on number 2, are we doing 2?
Yes, number
Okay,
2.
yes.
Alternative number 2. John?
Aye.
Mike?
And
And I am an aye.
All right,
So, one abstention, the rest affirmative.
okay.
Moving
Make the
on.
AG happy.
The fact that we have to define a family is crazy.
But that's the world we're in.
No, I know, that's where we're in, but it's still just,
The fact that we have to do this again is crazy.
yes, that too.
All right. So, manage growth strategy. Let me see.
So
Yes.
I had a conversation with Virginia after a town meeting on Monday, and I wanted to go back and read before tonight, but didn't get to it. Reread the strategic plan, because it occurs to me that after talking to Virginia, that I'm not sure that there's not a misunderstanding of what they were suggesting we do and how we're taking it. And so I wonder if it might not be a good place to start to have us and the strategic planning committee and possibly the select board and the town manager and Evan, I didn't mean to put you last, Evan, maybe have a combined work session to make a plan of what we should, of what exactly a managed growth strategy means and what they meant about how we should approach it. I mean, they spent a lot of time doing a lot of work and were basically saying you didn't do the job, or that was what it seemed like we were saying at the last meeting.
No. I think my opinion is that it's not clear that all of the members of that group are in agreement as to what a managed growth strategy is. Because
To be clear, the strategic planning committee did specifically hand this off to us.
Right.
So it's not like we're just pressing ahead and disregarding them and thinking we can do it right or whatever.
No,
I mean, we
but-
had the town manager be rather vociferous about the fact that we were to take this responsibility.
So,
Right.
yeah, it falls on us. I think the less cooks in the kitchen is kind of better. I think It's been handed off. Let's follow the procedure and let's
Okay.
go with it.
Yeah.
Let's not
And we
waste
did
time.
have Evan and Aaron and Badri here last meeting to talk about what it specifically was and is and what the expectations are. So
Okay,
I think we've got a general direction.
okay.
And I think that part of what I wanted to start talking about tonight, like what we were talking about last meeting, is what's the task force composition? What are the goals that we want to set for that task force? Is there a rough timeline that we want to get this done in? And we had talked about what are the metrics of those goals and what's the definition of done. I don't think we need to define all of that tonight, but we should start talking about it, because I think, based on my understanding, the planning board is going to be essentially the steering committee for that task force to develop the strategic growth plan. And so as a steering committee, we need to come up with some guidelines and some direction for that task force. So that's kind of what I was thinking of doing tonight. Thoughts?
That's good.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll give you a couple.
Yes.
Probably a timeline I would say 3 to no more than 4 months, possibly even less, but do something to make sure that this doesn't go on forever. Do we want to have something to say at town meeting in the fall, or is this kind of parallel to it and not related to any particular time?
No, I don't
Dave.
think it's tied to town meeting.
No, I don't think it is either, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody was thinking the same way.
Yeah.
I wasn't at your last meeting. Is the one-stop application accurately reflect what collectively we think a managed growth strategy ought to be?
Can you pull it up?
Determine
I
preferred
think
approach for
so,
desirable
based on
growth.
what I read in that very
It
high
has
level
a scope.
summary.
I mean, the short project description says hire a consultant, agree upon and define integrated approach for land use, zoning, economic development, housing, environmental infrastructure, and fiscal consideration. Determine preferred approach for desirable growth in terms of location, quantity, and type, assessment of roadway, water, sewer, and stormwater distribution systems to identify supply, demand, and capacity limitations. And
So-
policy revisions. I mean, is that what you're
Well,
asking?
yeah, and it has a detailed scope as well.
Right, but, I mean, let's
So-
start with that.
The only reason I'm asking is that kind of scope budgets out to 80 to 100,000. That's a pretty extensive process. Somewhat similar to the strategic planning process. What level of public engagement is needed? What level of consultant services on the technical side is needed? That's certainly more than 3 to 4 months.
Yeah. I mean, how long did the strategic plan? That was a year, right?
So I'm just, I mean,
And we gotta be
I'm
careful how much
surprised to hear
resource-
at this point, I'm not surprised to hear that people from the strategic plan and planning board and others have different viewpoints. But if everyone's referring to the one-stop grant application, maybe that's an easier path to agree or disagree on what it is we think we need or want. Because this clearly defines one approach. If this isn't the approach, then it could be a 3 to 4 month process. It may not require $80,000 to $100,000. This is what I think is needed to do a data-driven,
Okay.
professional consultant services, to really drive to the point of, it's not so much about natural resources, it's really about what are your infrastructure constraints, what kind of growth, economic housing strategy do you want? Can existing infrastructure accommodate it? If not, what needs to be done to upgrade infrastructure?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, given our discussions before you submitted this, I think that the examples that we saw around strategic growth plans for other communities made sense. And I do agree with you. I think the timeline is absolutely, for this type of thing, more than a 3 to 4 month timeline. I think.
Could we pin it down 6, 8? You know, what?
I think we need to let this kind of drive, because I think this could be a good output that we could then hand off to our state reps to get additional funding for the town to support their housing initiative. So if we do this correctly, and this comes back, I mean, I don't know, I assume we don't have the infrastructure here. Maybe I'm wrong, but if it does say that, and it says this is how much, additional you need to support this.
Just to back into it, if the one-stop comes back and gives us 80, and we're providing, 20%, 25%, you're talking a $100,000 budget.
Yeah.
That's a robust commitment. The town is basically saying, we're undertaking a very robust, very data-driven, very strategic planning process with intentionality and intended consequences. If it's anything other than that, then it could be significantly less expensive and a much lighter lift.
Well, maybe we should
But
wait
I'm
and
just-
have the consultants get.
I'm just
maybe
reacting
even
to
when
what you
we're
said
choosing-
where several months after strategic plan completes its work, this has been posted for a couple meetings, and there's conversations about, we're not exactly sure what we need or what we want.
No, I wasn't saying that. I was
Oh.
saying, I'm not sure the strategy, and I mean, I personally think that I have no idea what a timeline for something like this should be, and I would probably want the input of the consultants
whoever's
that were
right.
that
yeah.
we're talking about engaging to
Agreed.
tell us, if you're going to give us X and Y and Z, how much is it going to cost and how long is it going to take? Because I don't know what it takes to delve into the data to get that output.
Right.
And by timeline, I wasn't implying that we should be setting the timeline for the entire process. I was more thinking about, okay, when do we need to set the task force up? When do we need to start getting them together? Because they're going to need to be the ones to pick the consultant.
Yeah.
So that's the upfront timeline is what I was thinking,
And-
not the overall timeline.
When do we find out about the grant money?
That's what I was gonna
like,
ask.
yeah.
Be October.
So if that's like October, I mean, that's still time. And then do you have to ask for additional money at like the town meeting or something like this?
Not likely, no.
All right, so what do we need, what do you need for us? Let's move on, because we're
So-
getting stuck here.
I would like to talk about what we want for the task force composition first. We had talked initially, I think, Evan, about 2 planning board. Yeah,
I
do you
recommend to
remember-
I
do you
recommended
remember the
2 planning
recommendations?
board, 2 select board, 2 former 2020 master planning committee members, 2 former strategic planning committee members, 1 town meeting rep, 1 at large, and 1 resident, something like that.
So that's 11
It's
people.
11 people. At a minimum, it's 9 people.
Like
Again,
2
if this-
planning
if-
board,
again,
2
if this
select
is-
board, 2 master plan, 2 strategic plan, 1 town meeting, 1 at large, and what was the last
And
one?
then, whatever, you just need 11. At a minimum, you're talking, I think you need a diverse group
Yeah.
of people, people who were tapped into strategic plan. Having 2 2020 master planning committee members may be beneficial. You're talking 9.
But I think, but that doesn't include any, I think we need I like to have some residents or, like, or,
Yeah, so if you wanted to drop, if you wanted to drop 2 down to 1 on strategic plan and master plan, then you add a couple more
I
residents.
would, yeah, I would drop the.
So you're still at 9 to 11.
Right.
Wouldn't we want some representation across the components?
I was just
that
thinking
we
that too.
identify?
Yeah.
So that would include, I mean, land use, zoning, economic development, that'd be yes, but there's housing, there's environmental, open space, natural resources.
Yeah, so many of the members
Structural, physical.
who come from strategic plan or master plan will likely be double representing.
Yeah.
But that would reflect an $80,000 to $100,000,
Yeah.
9-month process. Is it heavy? Yeah, it's a big committee.
Yep. But I think for this type of discussion, it needs that large perspective.
Okay.
Because it is going to be pulling in from a lot of different data and a lot of different perspectives on this.
Okay.
So I heard 2 planning board, maybe 1 select board, 1 master plan, 2 strategic plan. Did I hear 2 town meeting, 2 at large, and 1 Concom?
The one strategic plan?
I think we said 2 planning, 2
Anita,
select board.
Anita was talking about 2, 3, 4 residents.
Yeah.
And some, and like, let's, like, or maybe, like, you added an extra town meeting rep?
Yeah, I think
Oh,
we
I
should
think
at
you
least
need
have
some
2
Concom.
town meeting
I think,
reps.
so don't I, yeah,
And they're residents as well.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
wouldn't,
they're
I wouldn't
residents, so they
designate a Concom member.
yeah.
I would not designate.
No.
Why?
Because of, what about Housing Advisory Board? What about, it's just, maybe you bring them in as stakeholders, but,
It shouldn't, I
I
mean,
mean, again, I don't view this as heavy on natural resources and open space, just like I don't view this heavy on, culture and quality of life. I mean, the real core issues here are, do you want to grow, and if so, how are you going to do it?
Nuts and bolts.
Everything else is kind of secondary.
but
I
then
mean,
you're-
because if you're going to prioritize environmental and open space, well, then, then you don't really need to focus on where you're going to grow and how you're going to grow.
But you also have to ensure that we're protected. So,
Yeah, I'm just-
I mean, they protect what we have for open space and for environmental.
I'd really caution against making this group too big. It'll just become unwieldy, and if I can go back to the experience I've had on master plan and on strategic plan, actually finding enough members to fill a big committee like that is not easy.
You're still going to have to reach out and do
I
engagement.
think 8 or 9 or
Yeah, that's
10, that's about as high as you want to get.
So my recommendation is that we target for a high number, see who we get for volunteers and appointments, because the last task force we asked for, or someone asked for 2 Concom members, and they provided 1.
Right.
So I would like to cast the net wide, see what we get, and then if we need to trim it down, we can trim it down.
Okay,
There are
that's
likely
an approach.
there are likely going to be some overlaps, so we'll see who
Be
we
a lot
get.
of overlap.
Yeah.
If 500 people in the volunteers
also-
in the town do all the work.
I also don't want to overtax people so that people who are doing other task forces not necessarily think that they should be doing this task force. So I want to make sure that we're spreading it out. So I want to try and keep the initial call for people high, and then we'll see what we get, and then make the final call on that number, if that's okay.
I like that approach.
I like that approach, okay, move on.
Okay. So 2 planning board, 1 select board, 2020 master plan member, 2 strategic plan committee. I do think we should have a Concom representative.
If they want to be part of it, let them choose.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
this,
2 at large, and 2 town meeting reps.
okay, that works.
Okay. All right.
That sounds an awful lot like the strategic planning committee.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's an
All right.
extension.
So then,
The result of the managed The growth strategy task force will be to ask the planning board to do it.
Yes. All right, so now I want to talk through what are the high-level goals, and what definition of done is. I don't want to do that tonight. I would like you to start thinking about that. What do we expect out of this? We'll have some initial discussion on it. We can then also ask the consultant that we eventually get. But one of the things that I want to do is make sure that when we get this group together, we've got a really clear goals that they can achieve, and then when do we expect them to be done? What's their final deliverable, and at what level? So think about that. We'll talk about it over the next couple meetings, and then we'll start reaching out to people to start getting that group together. If we hear from the grant in October, we'll probably have to convene the group in September to start really getting them together and thinking about the goals that we're setting for them, and then getting them forming and storming and norming so that they can select the consultant. Okay? So we'll start chatting about that next week, or next meeting. All right, anything else on growth strategy?
No, I just think there's a lot of good stuff in this thing that you did, in the one-stop full application that matters to what we're talking about. So there's a lot of good terms in here and stuff.
One thing that I didn't see in the proposal was specifically identifying a projection of what our needs are going to be with regards to both economic development and housing, how we establish what, because those are, I think, the two primary demand signals, and how those are going to be identified or estimated. I think that's going to be a critical starting point for this.
Would you say the housing and what?
Housing and economic development. In other words, like in your projection of where things are going to be in the next 5, 10, 15, or 20 years, what do you think your need for housing is going to be, and particularly like what kinds of segments are you targeting? And then also, what kind of need do you have for economic development, which is likely going to be tied to our financial forecast?
There's a little bit of that in the goals and objectives section where they're talking about housing, environmental. There's a little bit in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about not identifying it as something that needs to be addressed, but identifying how we're actually going to, as everyone was pointing out, this should be a data-driven exercise, and I think you need to start with what do you think your needs are going to be, based on, I mean, we know our financial needs because John does great projections for us. And so, we can already get a handle on what kinds of financial needs are we going to have. I don't know if we have a good estimate on what our housing needs are going to be, but I know there's a housing production plan. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things that I think we would want to identify early on, because we're just going to basically be responding to those in terms of what kind of infrastructure do I need to support that, what kinds of protections do I need potentially, and natural resources because of it, and all that sort of, how does it impact social and so on and so on. So.
Right. And I think that goes off of last time when I was asking for like statistics and some data around where are we today, right? So that they can see where we want to be.
And I'm assuming the consultant that we'd be working with would know what we would need to pull together for that starting point.
Would hope so.
Right. It just wasn't identified as a specific task or objective, is my point. But we can certainly, I mean, it certainly would fit within the general scope. And so, I have no question that we could task them to do that. I'm just saying that we would want to task them to do that.
Yep, sounds good.
I like it. I agree.
If the board would like, I mean, I just need some time. I could work on it over the summer. I could put a short presentation together about the town's finances, because I think people are going to ask, well, why would we want to encourage growth? Some people will ask, and I can show what our strengths are, what our challenges are, and then get everybody's feedback. And then
That'd be great.
Yeah,
That would be really great. And if you could throw into that some what ifs on like what the mixes might be of what we're looking to get from, our business tax base versus our residential, or what kinds of residential, that sort of thing would be really interesting to see, because that's going to influence then how much business we want to try to attract, and what kinds of residential opportunities do we want to create, and so forth and so on.
And I think that would be good for the board, maybe in the fall, September timeframe, to look at and have that task force see as well. Okay.
Thank you, John. I think that would be really great. And I was kind of secretly hoping you'd want to do that.
All right. Next item. Where is my agenda? Cushing Place Bridge.
Just a placeholder.
Any news on that?
I have not advanced that
Okay.
at this point.
All right. Liaison updates.
This goes to Marcy, I guess, but the Cushing Place bridge topic, we probably should try to bring in the Center Village into our thoughts and plans on that, since there was also their plan.
Yeah, they haven't met, so.
Going to be meeting July 10th.
Okay, I was gonna say, hadn't heard anything when the next meeting was, because I didn't meet this month. So I know we had talked about the last meeting, if they're okay with not having the bridge based on what town council had said, and going a different route and bringing that to them. So I will talk to them when we meet on the 10th.
Okay. And I also talked with Evan over email about what we had talked about as next steps with town council for the bridge. Okay.
Maybe reach out to the chair of the Center Village.
I thought Mercy was going to do that.
Yep, I can reach out to them.
Thank you. All right. Yep.
A couple of, you taking other, just a couple of things. So on June 4th, there was an informal meeting with department staff. Evan had invited a planning board member and a couple people were either out of town or couldn't go, so I volunteered to go. It was an opportunity for the owner of 242 Billerica Road to meet with town staff, including, DPW engineering, conservation, community development director, etc. And just to orient everybody, so this is a vacant parcel of land on Billerica Road. It's bordered on the left by the Harvard Vanguard Atrius facility, and on the right is the neighboring lot is the memory care facility of Sunny Acres, the nursing facility and memory care wing. And so what was proposed was a structure. The business use was proposed adult daycare. They got some valuable feedback. My personal opinion, I'm looking forward to it coming in. We'll all review it. I'm looking forward to them coming in. I think it fits in that area with the neighboring facilities and that. So I'm sure we'll hear more about it. So I just wanted to mention that. What I took away from it is they got some valuable feedback that day from engineering, conservation, and others, and they seemed pleased by it. And then on June 18th, I attended last week the NIMCOG meeting. A number of things were discussed. They talked about doing a comprehensive economic development strategy for all the member communities that make up NIMCOG. And so looking forward to that coming out. And it was a good meeting in Lowell. And that's about all I have.
John, what was the time frame for that?
For
the NIMCOG's economic
right,
study?
Right now, they're taking public comment through June 30th. But you can if you go to the NIMCOG website, you can view it, and they're just looking to try to they're going to study each town in the member district. They're pulling together data, and it's to have like this comprehensive document that they can use when they apply for grants and other things. So it's kind of interesting. But I don't know when the final document will be produced, but they're taking public comment through the end of this month. I know that's coming quickly, but
So is the goal to get a comprehensive economic plan for the whole region by collating the districts, or is it to kind of have focused economic development plan for each district? I didn't quite
I
get
think it's
that.
to try to have a cohesive plan for the district, but they wanted to, they are studying data from each town from what
Okay.
they said, so, I think it will help either applying for grants, different opportunities, things of that nature, so.
Okay, anyone else?
I have housing advisory. We met today. We actually had short presentation from Mike Asciolo, if that's how you say his name, from NEMCOG. We got a few days ago a 153-page draft of the housing production plan for Chelmsford. And he did a presentation of a needs assessment and then a way to get a vision statement for the housing production plan, and then goals to support the vision of the vision statement. And so there's like a grid and various tasks for each of the 5 goals. Brief, I could talk for an hour, but I won't. But there is a grid. I don't know where you can find, because we got it emailed to us, but the draft is going to be posted tomorrow, and on page 115 of it is the action plan, is the beginning of a grid, and it breaks out the different strategy items, the goals, and each one. So it's just, for instance, the first one is encourage and foster public and private partnerships to address the housing needs for vulnerable populations. And then there's 5 different strategy points within that particular goal, and each one's broken out, which of the goals does that achieve, who would be the lead agents on that topic. Is it medium, low, or high priority? And then is it something that's like a one-time thing? When's the goal of completion, or is it ongoing? There's quite a few things on the grid for which the planning board is listed as one of the leads or partners. And a number of them are also things that we're interested in doing that we've already identified. They kind of tie in with our thoughts about the overlays, looking at them, thoughts about looking at areas of conflict within zoning, thoughts about looking about where we could put certain types of housing that we are looking to develop, whether it's the missing middle or smaller kind of startup communities. So anyway, there's a lot of overlap with things that we've been talking about as a board. And so anyway, it's going to get, the draft is out for comment starting when it's posted until I think the middle of, almost a month, the middle of July, and then he's going to present it to our second meeting in July, is that right? And then he's going to also present it to the select board the couple days later at their next meeting after ours, and then we will endorse it, is that right?
It's required to be approved by Select Board and Planning Board.
Yeah, and then it goes to town meeting?
No, then it goes into the state.
Endorsed as it goes to the state as our production plan, which we are bound to produce.
We're not legally bound to
periodically.
produce it. It's a creature of 40B, where if you're under 10%, you can use a planned production plan to potentially negotiate, potentially deny, potentially leverage.
We are
It's
happily in
it's a
safe harbor.
regulatory document within the world of 40B.
So I understand the intended use of it, but it feels very backwards to me that we're doing that before a strategic growth plan.
Yep.
The other way to look at it is
It can inform.
the OSRP plan, which was just recently adopted, the housing production plan. They're very high level documents, more aspirational than strategic, based upon whatever constraints are agreed upon.
But it has action items.
It has action items, but the action items are very similar to the action items in the master plan. Many of them are suggestions, or asking someone to study this further. They're not necessarily
roadmap.
tied together in any coordinated fashion. Again, OSRP says preserve as much open space as you can and protect the environment. The housing plan says, build housing for anybody everywhere.
But that's why I'm thinking that the strategic growth plan seems like it should be informing both of those things.
It will. Ultimately, I think if the growth management strategy is successful,
Logical, and we're talking about government.
it's also planning.
Well,
Remember,
and
it's also
we can
it's
also
all
change the
it's also
priority level of
planning.
things.
So planning is
Yeah.
These are things that we all might want to look at, but then once we have the strategic vision, we can say, well, this we had as a medium priority, but this really
I
should be
think
the highest of all.
those
Or we
standalone.
have absolutely no interest in doing any of
Right.
this because it's counterproductive to what
Correct.
we.
So if the growth management strategy is successful, I could see those other documents being modified accordingly. But as a starting point, much of what's in those standalone documents, existing conditions, values, guiding principles, is relevant.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the growth management strategies struggle, a challenge will be how do you balance
Right.
some of those competing interests?
So as part of developing the managed growth strategy, we should look at those documents.
Exactly, yep.
The foundations, the current state, not necessarily.
Those will be
the directional piece of
tremendously
it.
valuable for the consultant in the process, because you're not starting from zero.
Right.
There's also a lot of data in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then they'll have to be redone later, depending on what we come up with on the strategy. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Any other liaison updates? So for Concom last night, they're in the process of redoing some bylaw and regulations reviews. They've come up with a few different areas. They are going to check in with legal counsel about recommendations for whether or not they want to make changes to the regulations or the bylaws, depending on what the changes are that they want to do. So that's still in the works. They also got an update on the gap analysis from the Board of Health. I guess the consultant has come up with recommendations based on the surveys that he received. And so the recommendations are going to be distributed soon. I don't know what that means, what timeline that is, but they'll be distributed to the individual committees and commissions, and then we'll have to figure out what we do with those. Based on what little I know of it, my recommendation is probably that we would want to get all of these groups together, look at what the recommendations are and where they overlap, and then see where we want to work together to close the gaps.
Great.
Awesome.
So, but that all may change depending on what the recommendations are and how
So
deep they go.
Are they not sending out like a full list? Like, wouldn't that make sense to know who's doing what?
It would, and I'm hoping that Joel has some further insight based on Board of Health.
Maybe ask for it, Joel. Like a full list, so we all know.
I'll try. It's been,
Yeah, it would be good to get a full report to see what the other recommendations are for the other areas, so that we can have a good discussion on it. But
Is that something that's like publicly available?
it should be if it's going to each of the boards and groups. Yep.
Okay.
All right. No new business, no meeting minutes. Our next meeting is July 9th. We will have the continued hearing. We will have new public hearings on all of the zoning articles that we're putting forward. I'll have the slides updated and ready to go probably over this weekend, so everyone can have them ahead of time. And then we'll start talking also about the Probably the task force a little bit more, if we have time, depending.
The, speaking of time, the Chelmsford Mall, 265 Chelmsford Street, two standalone drive-throughs. Public hearing will open on the 9th.
Okay, so maybe we won't talk about the task force that day.
And then just related to Kate's Corner, I'm sending out direct notifications to all of the impacted property owners plus abutting property owners. I'll send that out tomorrow, a copy of the planning board on it. And it included, I think, 4 of the slides from the slide deck. All that information related to Kate's Corner is also posted on the planning board website, so the mailer refers people to go to the planning board website. And then the legal ad for the zoning public hearing for July 9th goes in the Lowell Sun. It was in the Lowell Sun today and next Wednesday.
Okay. Are there any other special groups, special interest groups that we should notify about Kate's Corner hearing that people can think of?
Yeah, they seem pretty well informed. I think anybody that wants to know about this is.
I just want to make sure we didn't miss anyone.
No, but
Do
maybe
they have like a Heart Pond Association?
There is.
And I think actually a couple of people that we've seen and discussed it with are involved with that.
And maybe we send out, can we send out maybe an email to the town meeting reps in that area? Or all the town meeting reps?
That's a
I
good
do
idea.
that regularly for those planning board public hearings.
Yeah, like even for like, maybe all.
For everybody,
like
everybody,
all the
yeah,
town
because,
meeting reps, just
yeah,
so like they know
yeah,
that
because
we're
I mean,
changing,
some
we're
of the
coming.
articles, other than Kate's Corner, all the other articles are townwide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I, just based upon experience, while I send them out, as you know, town meeting attendance is light. I would encourage you as
Yeah.
elected officials and some of you at town meeting reps to do the same thing.
Yep.
I think what we've learned, and it's pretty obvious, is that if town meeting members show up at town meeting as the first time seeing zoning,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's challenging.
It is going to be tough, though, because it is July, but
But, maybe, I don't know, like you send it out as the chair, because you can just click
But
on the-
even if you guys do emails, it increases awareness.
yeah.
Yeah, just like, hey, if you can't make,
Yeah.
we're doing this.
We're
or
not
watch
closing,
it.
we're not gonna close it on the 9th. We may
Right.
keep it open for an extended period of time.
Right.
So give people, at least they're aware of it. They could tune in, they could watch the video.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, I will take a motion.
Motion.
Second. Actually, it doesn't need second.
To
I believe
adjourn.
a motion to adjourn does not need a second.
All right, fine, I'll vote, yes, we're not taking a
Yeah,
roll
yeah.
call.
Anita made the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Good night, everyone.
You go.
All-
I made it.